Hey guys, today I want to talk about a sword that I've had for quite some time. It's the Michael Pearce Tinker Bastard Sword. This is designed by Michael Pearce, who goes by the nickname Tinker, and it's sold by Hanwei, or Paul Chen, or CASIberia, depending on how you know them by. Just to start off here, this grip wrap that I've done here is a custom job. This sword comes standard with a leather-wrapped cord-wrapped grip, so it is black leather over cord over your normal wood grip. I just put some cord on this because I wanted some additional grip, and I may actually customize the color and put in a riser on this. Just some custom work I'm doing. Under this cord is the standard black leather though. Starting with the grip here, or the hilt, the overall hilt is about 9.5 inches, including the crossguard and the pommel. The grip itself is closer to about 7 inches. Taking this out of the scabbard, which is included, you can see that this is the fullered model, with the fuller running down about the first third of the blade here. There is an unfullered model of this sword, just a standard sharp sword, which is about $10 cheaper. This is the sharp fuller model. Now let's move that blade past the camera so you can get the basic shape here. And it is basically a diamond cross-section standard longsword blade, with naturally that nice fuller running the first third of the blade. I'll just get a nice look at that real quick. Awesome. So, this sword is pretty solidly constructed. It does have a hex nut on the bottom. And that actually lets you take apart lets you take off the pommel, the grip, and the crossguard and put on another blade if you so choose. And I actually did, and we'll get to that in a second here. The overall length of this sword is 42 3/4 inches. If I move back, you can probably see the whole thing in frame here. The blade itself looks like 33 5/16 inches, and again that grip is about 9.5 inches overall. The weight, it's about it weighs in at 2 pounds and 6.5 ounces, it looks like, just reading the date off my sheet, and it feels really nice. Again, the camera's going to make this blade seem wobbly, but I assure you it's quite stiff. But it handles very well. It's a nicely weighted longsword. So as I said, I did get the dull blade option for this sword. And the dull blade, I don't have it attached naturally. It looks just like this. It is also fullered, except you'll notice that the fuller, instead of going 1/3 of the blade, goes almost 3/4 of the blade. The tip here on mine is a bit damaged because I was trying to put some adhesive foam, something to make this a little bit safer, as this is not a rolled edge. This is essentially what they've done, from my best guess, is they've taken a standard fullered sharp blade, taken the fuller out another, 2/4 of the blade, and then simply not sharpened it. The edge is decently thick, but it's thin enough that I honestly would not want to use this for free sparring. When I had this blade attached to the sword, I was basically doing forms practice, solo drills, things like that. I would not be comfortable putting this up against another person because, again, I just don't think the edges are thick enough, and the tip, being fairly thin and not rolled, is pretty nasty. The scabbard, taking a look at that real quick, has a nice little chap on the end, or a chape on the end. It is leather wrapped wood, so there's a seam on the back, but the front looks really nice. It's a very clean scabbard. Mine's been a bit scuffed up from carrying it around and such. One note here is that the throat of this scabbard is fairly thin, and when you insert or remove the sharp longsword, you'll hear it, do the classic sort of swing. And, that's not a terrible thing. It's just that I think that the metal, you can kind of hear it there, maybe scraping against the scabbard just ever so slightly, which isn't great. Another note is that if you do get the blunt blade, or the version of this longsword with a blunt blade, it does not fit in the scabbard. And I'll show you that now. Basically, it'll go in about that far, and then the blade itself is too wide, and the edges are too wide to allow it to go in any further. So with the sword mounted, you're a good almost 2 inches out of the scabbard if you try to put this blade mounted on the hilt into the scabbard. So just a note there. I'm just going to remove this with some difficulty. There we go. Excellent. Alright. And I will put up all the length information, the length and weight information in the field below, also with the metric conversion once I get that done. So my general impressions of this sword, again, I bought this sword a little under a year ago when I first started doing HEMA as basically a steel simulator. I fully intended to get the blunt blade just to allow me to, swing it around in my apartment where I was living at the time without damaging things too terribly. And for a while this was a good sword. The problem is that the style I study, I mainly do Italian Fiore longsword, and the hilts we use are usually longer than this, and the blades are a touch longer too. Let me just grab a sword from the wall to demonstrate here. This is the Valiant Arms I-beam, and this is a pretty typical grip length for what we see in Fiore. It's about I believe this is a 10 or 11 inch grip, and you can see that this guy is noticeably about an inch or so shorter than what I'm used to. Just see that. So the hilt's a little shorter than what I'm used to, and how that basically affects my grip is that I end up going, keeping my hand all the way on the pommel basically when I use this sword, whereas with a more typical style or length longsword, my grip is typically towards the bottom of the grip on top of the pommel. So just a slight difference there in grip for me, and when I cut with this, that adjustment sometimes is a little off-putting, but for the most part not too bad. This is my designated cutting sword for longsword style cutting. I have a saber for cutting as well, and I don't really have a single-handed sword for cutting. However, I will say that this sword is light enough that in one hand, it's generally not too terrible. You could almost think about using this with a shield if you're interested in that sort of thing. It really is quite nicely balanced for either one hand or two, which basically, fits the general bastard sword description or terminology. So, overall, this is a really, again, well put together sword that allows you to change out the blade if you want to put a blunt blade on there. I think honestly that these blunt blades would be a little dangerous for free sparring, but would be okay for solo drills, and again for controlled slow partner drills, as long as you're matching up one of these with another one of these. I think that these would really eat into a thicker, a waster that has any sort of thicker edge, like these for example. That's a very thick edge. This is a very thin edge. This thin edge is going to eat right into those thicker edges and really, start to degrade them. So as long as you're using this against another of its kind, I would say that's okay. But other than that, you may want to take caution when sparring with these blades at all. In terms of the length, again, I wish her a bit longer, and I'm going to try to secure a Tinker Pearce longsword in the future as my blunt blade falls to the ground. I am hoping to secure a Tinker Longsword in the future to do a comparison review to this. Basically, the grip on it is slightly longer. I have held it in person, but I haven't done a review yet. The grip is slightly longer, and the blade is slightly longer. And it brings the overall length of the sword closer to what I'm more used to in Fiore style. And, you know, just closer to the kind of grip that I'm used to as well for cutting. As I said before, this is my designated cutting sword for longsword. I've mainly cut bottles with this and some wood, just some wooden dowels, but it cuts really nicely. As with all swords, you have to make sure your edge alignment is right on, otherwise it won't cut correctly. But it works really well. It's taken, it hasn't been heavily used, but what use it has suffered, it hasn't taken really any visible damage from it. It's a very hardy sword. And I mean, it looks really nice too. Michael Pearce is actually a local sword smith, and I've seen some of his custom work, so it's neat that he does these mass-produced swords that are still nicely designed, but very much more accessible. Very accessible, because these, basically, I think Hanwei keeps them in stock just about all the time, and they're fairly affordable. Going over the prices for these, so this sword, the sharp, fullered, Tinker Bastard sword, costs $210 USD via Cult of Athena. I post most of my prices at Cult of Athena prices because they just have the best deals on everything. MSRP was about $335, I believe, so about $150 off of, or $130 more than the Cult of Athena price. The longsword, sorry, the Tinker Bastard sword without the fuller is $200 rather than $210. So there's the price difference on those. The dull blade by itself, this was $90. So that's a pretty good deal for a blade that lets you make your sharp sword into a safer training sword. So that was cool. Having this is also neat because I can show you the construction of the tang on these swords. And you can see that this is one full piece of steel with a nice solid tang and a long screw thread here which goes into your pommel. And there's no welding here. This is all one piece of steel all the way through. Nice solid tang, which is about I believe this is a historical length and width for a medieval sword tang also. And having taken apart this sword, I can tell you that it's the exact same type of construction, very solid, very durable, good tang construction there. Yeah. Awesome. So that is about all that I wanted to talk about with this sword. Again, I think that it's a very well made sword. I think the length could be a little bit longer in the grip and the blade, just to bring it to what I'm personally used to for a longsword. However, I think this is still a great longsword. The balance is right. You could use it in one or two hands. It cuts very well. It looks really nice. If you're a fan of the wheel pommel over the scent stopper, this is the sword to get because the Tinker Longsword has a more of a scent stopper shaped pommel. I'm more of a fan of the scent stoppers over wheel pommels myself, but this is still aesthetically and physically a great sword. Handles really well, looks really good. I think the price was right on the money, especially for a sharp sword. And you know, if you combine the price for $210 for the sharp and then $90 for the blunt, that means that for $300, give or take, you're getting a sharp sword and a training sword. and I don't know of any deals like that anywhere else. That's pretty great. All the other swords I've purchased have been between $200 to $400, and that's just for one type of sword, either a blunt or a sharp. So, there it is, the Michael Tinker Pearce Bastard Sword. And if there's anything else you'd like to know about this sword, or any questions or comments that you had, please leave them in the video and I'll answer as quickly as I can. Thank you for your interest, and thanks for watching. Thanks again for watching. Please hit subscribe and check out some of these other videos.